Let's jump right in. Over the weekend, I decided to make this video, and I think it's very important that I say this first thing Monday morning. We've got a lot of new subscribers. Welcome, by the way. And I want you to know something very important. You're not crazy.
I mean, look, this wasn't...
You actually eat this
Look,
stuff?
this wasn't here. There was nothing here. There was a space, and there was a building or something with flames coming out of it, and there were creatures writhing around, and they were growling and snarling, and there were flames, and I heard a voice say, Zool. It was right here.
I'm sorry, I'm just not getting any reading.
Well, are you sure you're using that thing correctly?
There's not, I think so, but I'm sure there are no animals in there.
Well, that's great. Either I have a monster in my kitchen or I'm completely crazy.
I don't think you're crazy.
You're not crazy. I promise you, you're not crazy. Look, we've all been there. I was there about 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, something like that. Right around Trump's election, I felt one day like I woke up and all of my evangelical leaders were basically, they could be on CNN right now, you know, saying the main progressive talking points and all of that kind of stuff. You're not crazy. And I think I found one way to demonstrate it just to encourage you guys, because I think that a lot of people are feeling a little bit disoriented right now. All my favorite preachers are telling me all kinds of nonsense right now. And how did this happen? And is it true? Or maybe it's just me? Because I know for a while I felt like it was just me. Maybe I'm just a nut. Maybe this is just how crazy people feel when they go crazy. You know what I mean? But you're not. You're not crazy. And I think I found a way to demonstrate that. Before we get into it, though, I wanted to say this. Go ahead. I've done a lot of videos. I've done a lot of videos online, probably almost 600 videos at this point. And I think that there are some, in the 600, there's a few gems. They can't all land, of course, but there's a few gems in there. And so I'm going to start sending out emails to my email list with the videos that I think are the most helpful, the most important. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, but they're videos that I think you'd probably enjoy and you'd probably learn a lot from. Go ahead to the AD Robles YouTube channel. adrobles.com, my website, adrobles.com. Check it out. I'm going to start sending out videos that I've done in the past that I find or that I thought were especially helpful. A lot of you have reached out to me over the weekend and have told me that the content that I've produced has helped you in conversations and has actually helped win brothers back from, dabbling with some of this social justice stuff, which almost brings a tear to my eye to hear that. I'm so grateful for that. I'm so grateful. So I'm going to start sending out some really helpful stuff. adrobles.com. Go ahead and sign up for my newsletter, and we will do this. Now, tell me if you've heard this one. Tell me if you've heard this one in online or even in conversations with people at your church or something like that. And they'll say something like this, like, you're being a hypocrite. You're being a hypocrite because you say preach the gospel to racism, but you don't just preach the gospel to abortion. You want abortion to be outlawed. You have political solutions to abortion, and you want to do things when it comes to abortion. So you're a hypocrite for saying, on the one hand, racism is something you just preach the gospel to, and on the other hand, abortion needs political solutions. You are a hypocrite. In fact, this is something that Matt Chandler said the other day. Let me just play the clip for you, and you can hear what he said.
Like when you say, hey, we're not going to get involved, let's just preach the gospel to that, which, by the way, I find so hypocritical. You don't just preach the gospel of sex trafficking. You don't just preach the gospel on the issue of life and abortion. No, you act. And so it's why it's like this brain broke disjoint that's got us acting absurd.
So there it is. That's the premise. You've probably heard this from calm people, your friends, lay people, leaders. You've seen this. This is the main argument about this social justice stuff and this race stuff. This is why we need to act on race, because we do it with abortion, but for some reason, and it's often very strongly implied that the reason that you don't want to act on race is because you yourself are a racist, and you might not know it, but you're a racist. That's often very strongly implied when people say this kind of stuff about abortion versus racism. But the reality is that this argument is extremely manipulative, because racism and abortion are not even close to the same kind of topic in this discussion. Not even almost close. And this is the thing, like, a lot of people kind of know this kind of intuitively, but let me try to explain it a little bit, and then I want to show you how far this goes when it comes to our evangelical leaders and our leadership and our organizations, and how much they really do parrot the talking points of CNN and the progressive Democrats in our country. It's really sick when you really think about it. And so I think I can show you what this is all about. Number one, abortion is legal in our country. Abortion is legal in our country. It is legal to kill babies in the womb and up to the point of birth. And a lot of people want to make it legal to kill them even after they're kind of like halfway born and stuff like that. And that's, I feel like we're often desensitized to that because we just kind of talk about it so much and we don't really think about what's going on there. But if you let your mind dwell on what happens in the abortion clinic up the street from your house, it's gross, man. It's really gross, and it's really evil. It's vile. It's disgusting, and we ought to be up in arms about that. I mean, no question about it. It's awful, and it's legal in our country. And so, yeah, of course we need to preach the gospel about abortion. Of course we need to preach the gospel to abortive mothers. Of course we need to preach the gospel to abortion doctors so that their hearts change. But also there's a very definitive law that is unjust in our country that somehow allows a loophole for murder if it's a baby in the womb. And so we need to close that loophole. There needs to be a political, social solution there as well, because there's a very clear injustice, a very clear partiality in our law that allows for you to kill and murder a baby of a certain age. That's unjust. That's partial. That's completely against any real morality, any real ethics out there. It's just overturns it. It puts it on its head. And so, of course, there needs to be action taken when it comes to abortion, political action and social action and civil action. Right now, the civil governing authority is allowing a colossal injustice in its borders as a rule. That's like the law of the land, right? So they're allowing this as a rule. And so, of course, we need to act as Christians. We don't exclude preaching the gospel, of course, but there's a clear injustice when it comes to abortion. We need to close that loophole, right? And so that is a completely different thing than racism. Guys, racism is a vile sin, right? Racism is evil, but racism should not be a crime. You can't make a crime in someone's brain. If someone doesn't like black people or white people or Latinos, you shouldn't make that a crime because that's inside their brain. Just like lustful thoughts shouldn't be a crime either. They are sins, they are grievous sins, but they're not a crime. Now, if you decide to take it a step further and your hatred towards blacks or Latinos or whites or whoever, it doesn't matter. If you take it a step further and it leads you to beat them up or to murder them or to steal from them or to hurt them in some way, then of course we have laws that are set up to punish you for those things. If you murder someone, regardless of why, you should be prosecuted according to the law. Murder's already illegal. You see, that's why people say, preach the gospel, right? Because murder's already illegal. Stealing's already illegal. Hurting someone, stealing, beating someone up, lynching, all of these things are already illegal. And that's why this whole idea of comparing this to abortion and saying, see, you act with abortion, but you don't act with racism, it's so manipulative because all of the outworkings of racism that would be a crime, they're already illegal. They're already illegal, except for abortion, incidentally. But you see what I'm saying? So when we say you don't act, it's like, well, no, you do act where you need to act. But when it comes to what's going on in someone's brain, if they don't like black people, they don't like Latinos, they don't like Mexicans, whatever it is, then that the only thing that'll actually fix that is the gospel of Jesus Christ. Someone's mind doesn't just change automatically. No, Jesus Christ and the power of the Holy Spirit changes somebody's minds, and then they repent of their sins and they seek after God. They become a slave to righteousness instead of a slave to sin. That is the power of the gospel. And if we were able to identify a single law that was partial, a single law that applied to blacks but not to whites, a single law that was unjust in that way, we should seek to address those as well. But the reality is, there aren't. When you hear a presentation like this from Matt Chandler, he's never going to give you one of those single laws. And the reason why he's not going to give you a single law that's partial is because we've gotten rid of most of those laws. Now, I'm not egotistical enough to think that I know every law, so I know every law is impartial. I'm not stupid enough to make a claim like that. But it's not on me to figure that out. You're the one that's saying that there's some injustice here, so point out the injustice. And if it's a true injustice, I'll be right there with you. I'll be right there with you. But see, you can see sort of the weirdness here of using abortion as a kind of a similar thing, kind of like an analogy. It's not related at all. Abortion is legal. You know what I mean? So, of course, there needs to be action there to correct the legality of it. We also still preach the gospel to it, but we also need to correct the injustice there as well. And there's really nothing similar to that when it comes to the race issue. It's not the same thing. It's not the same kind. That's a very manipulative tactic to use. Really, the reason why they use it is because they know that we do take political action on abortion, so they want to trick you into thinking this is the same thing. It's not the same thing. But actually, it goes deeper than this. It goes a lot deeper than this. Because, unfortunately, a lot of our evangelical leaders have kind of assumed a very soft posture when it comes to abortion. They'll say that abortion's a sin. They might say that abortion is murder, but when it comes to really how they act and what their posture is on it, it's really sort of limp-wristed and weak. And if you're a fan of Apologia Studios, Apologia Church, and all that kind of stuff, you'll know how often they encounter pushback when they go to the abortion clinics to preach the gospel, because we understand that the gospel is the power of God unto salvation, and so we want to see these abortive mothers and these abortion doctors saved for God's glory and for His kingdom and all that kind of stuff. We also know that justice matters as well. So again, we have to close the loophole when it comes to abortion. Abortion needs a political strategy. It needs a social strategy, and it needs a gospel strategy. It needs all of those things. We know that. But if you look, so often the Apologia Studios and people who go to abortion clinics get pushback. Don't preach the gospel here. This is not a place for that. This is unloving to preach the gospel here. You've seen that. I'm sure you've seen that, where people get pushback. Don't tell those women that killing their babies is sin. In fact, we've seen this from the Southern Baptist Convention. The ERLC is an organization that's completely funded by the Southern Baptist Convention. It's led by Russell Moore, Matt Chandler, Russell Moore. These are all buddies in the social justice woke, church type of a movement. This is an article that they put out, late last year. Why our hearts matter when talking about abortion. There's some decent stuff in this article, but I want you to hear this because all while we're getting, look, you don't just preach the gospel to abortion. That's true, but they also don't seem to really want you to do that even. They don't even want you to do that. That's how compromised our leadership is at this point. This article starts off by giving you a bunch of statistics about post-abortive mothers and how they're guilty, they feel shame, they're often given to addiction, self-esteem problems, anxiety. Sometimes they're depressed, sometimes they attempt suicide, and that's horrible because when you do something so horrible to your own baby, oftentimes you're going to feel guilty of that because the law of God is written on your heart. You should feel guilty for that. But listen to what this woman says, writing on behalf of the ERLC. She says, these statistics reveal that most women don't need you to tell them that abortion is wrong. Do you hear what she's saying there? They don't need you to tell them that abortion is wrong. Later in the article, she talks about how her mother was a post-abortive woman, so she had some of these symptoms of guilt and depression and all that kind of stuff. And listen to what she says here. This is the ERLC. This is the Southern Baptist Convention, the same group of people that say you don't just preach the gospel to abortion, you act. And they want you to act when it comes to racism, which is already the outworkings of racism, murder, stealing, violence. That's already a crime. And they're claiming like it's the same thing. They're trying to manipulate you into saying, well, you do the same thing you do for abortion, but they actually don't even want you to preach about abortion. Listen to this. She says, quote, So you don't have to post internet memes and videos, display bumper stickers, or make rude comments to tell me how terrible abortion is, nor do you need to shout it from the street corners or pulpits. I know. My mother knows. Over 66% of women know. Do you see this message that's being sent here? It's just saying, don't tell us from the pulpit. Don't preach that abortion is wrong. They also don't want you to necessarily go to the clinics either. She says don't shout from the street corners. Don't preach it from the pulpit. Don't go to the street corners because that's really mean, right? And so do you see what's happening here? They're trying to use the abortion issue, which is not anything like the race issue really at all, to manipulate you into doing political action for a situation that we already have handled from a political perspective. But at the same time, they really don't want you preaching against abortion either. And so it's just, you got to ask yourself, why are they treating abortion, a clear injustice, so differently than the way they're treating this race issue, where the injustice isn't always that clear? Now, am I saying that there are no racists out there? A lot of people will like to misrepresent me and say I'm saying there's no racists out there. And I'm saying that's not what I'm saying at all. There are racists out there. But the outworkings of racism, violence, murder, stealing, all that stuff, it's already illegal. And so we need to let that work through the legal system there. And if there are police departments that are racist and you can prove that they're racist, then we should do what we have to do to replace those police departments. But the thing is, like that's never where this goes. It's just assumed. It's right. It's just assumed that there are these racist laws, these unjust laws out there. And so just like an abortion, you need to act. And it's just like, that's really not how you do this. But I just want you to know, the whole point of this video is that you're not crazy. You are seeing the same things that I'm seeing. You're seeing this very soft approach towards abortion, this soft approach that doesn't really want you to make it illegal. Because, think about it. Think about how often you've seen pushback as well when you say, well, abortion should be prosecuted as murder. So if you get an abortion, you should be tried as a murderer and then punished as a murderer. In fact, you should get the death penalty if you kill a baby, right? Think about how many evangelical leaders would be like, whoa, 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 whoa. All of a sudden, they don't want justice. All of a sudden, they don't want justice. So on the abortion issue, they don't really care about justice. They want to use the rhetoric of abortion as murder, but they don't want to actually treat it like murder. And then on the race issue, where the law is already caught up as far as we can tell, right? And there are still some racist people out there, right, where you should preach the gospel to them, because we have a system. Systemically, we've rooted out racism, right? We've made it illegal in every way. We've gone above and beyond. We've made hate crimes the worst kind of crime, even though that's not in the law of God. We've gone above and beyond here. And so that's the area where you do actually need to preach the gospel to racism, because racist murder is already illegal, but racism in the mind, that's what the gospel fixes. They don't actually want you preaching just the gospel to that. They actually seem to poo-poo the gospel when it comes to that. No, you don't just preach the gospel. And so why is it that on one issue it's treated one way and the other issue it's treated another way? And why is it that it's essentially in lockstep with how the mainstream media and progressive Democrats and how they would treat these two things? You see, progressive Democrats will put up with you saying abortion is murder all day long, so long as you're not intending on actually treating it like murder. They don't care. But you see, the thing is, there's some inconsistency here. There's some inconsistency here. You're not crazy. You're seeing this. This is in black and white. This is on video. You're seeing this stuff, man. And so I want to know, why is that? Why is that? And so we're going to continue to explore that on this channel. I hope you found this video helpful. God bless.
Either I have a monster in my kitchen or I'm completely crazy.
I don't think you're crazy.
So I was about to upload this, and I just thought of something that I think also illustrates the point very well. just a thought experiment real quick. Can you imagine if there was rioting, looting, violence, and all the stuff that we're seeing on the news right now, except instead of it being about a supposedly racist cop situation, it was about abortion? And imagine if there were Christians talking about what was happening, or maybe even Christians participating in some of the tangential marches and maybe even using the slogans of an organization that was against abortion, but they were also for all kinds of evil stuff and things like that, like in the case of the Black Lives Matter. Can you imagine what the response from evangelical leadership like Matt Chandler would be, like Russell Moore would be, like all of these kind of talking head type figures? Do you think for a moment they would be saying, well, of course I condemn rioting, but let's not pretend like there's not a reason for this? Like, do you think that they would put up with it for a second? They wouldn't. They wouldn't. And so I just have to ask myself every single day, like, why is it that they feel like blacks, like I guess they just can't help it or something like that. Like we can't hold blacks to the same standards we hold whites or white evangelicals or Christians. You know, that like think about it. Like if white evangelicals were taking to the streets and burning things down and all the same stuff that's happening right now because of the abortion issue, do you think for a moment that the response from evangelical leaders would be similar? I don't think it would be. I think they'd be joining the chorus of CNN and Fox News, or not Fox News, CNN and Washington Post and New York Times, whatever they were saying, they would probably be saying it's a terrorist organization. The Christians are joining a terrorist organization. That's probably what we'd be hearing from Russell Moore and Big Eva and stuff like that. I mean, obviously I don't know. This is just a thought experiment, but I mean, come on.